Hello, everyone. My name is Muriel Siki, and I wish you a very, very warm welcome to this special edition of ArtTech Conversation in partnership with Swissnex in San Francisco and Project AMI. The title of this conversation is Gaming the Museum, the Power of Open Source Innovation in Cultural Spaces. For the next hour, our experts will address such themes as open source in cultural institutions, sustainable business models in open source, cross-border collaboration, and ecosystem partnerships. Before we begin our conversation, let me introduce Lucas Hagen, program manager at Swissnex in San Francisco. As I said, Swissnex is one of the organizers of today's events. So Lucas, tell us a bit more about Swissnex.
Thank you, and good morning from San Francisco. I'm really excited about today's project because I think it reflects some of the values and the work that we're trying to do here at Swissnex. But what is Swissnex? So, Swissnex is a global network for science, education, and innovation. And we have hubs across the US, India, China, Brazil, and Japan. And at Swissnex in San Francisco specifically, we fostered a transatlantic exchange between the ecosystem of the Bay Area and Switzerland. And we work with researchers, we work with entrepreneurs and artists, and we believe that we can empower the next generation of innovators, specifically through collaboration at the intersection between these different areas. So today's project, Project AMI, as we're going to hear about, I think demonstrates how creativity, technology, and collaboration create these opportunities. And we couldn't do this without our partners. We're really happy to partner with Max Kohler Stiftung and with ArtTech Foundation for this. But we're also funded by the State Secretary for Education, Research, and Innovation. And if you want to stay in touch, I'll just quickly share these two links. You can subscribe to our newsletter, or you can also sign up for our masterclass if you're in the Bay Area next week. And we have two EPFL researchers who will show how cutting edge technology makes centuries old art accessible and immersive. So if you're interested in that, sign up. And yeah, with that being said, thank you so much. We're very happy for about this webinar, and we're happy to learn a little bit more about games and museums.
Thanks, Lucas, and you'll be staying with us throughout the conversation because you're going to be monitoring the questions from all the people who are watching us today. And the other organizer of this event is the ArtTech Foundation. And to tell us more about it, let's hear from Nathalie Pichard, who is the foundation's executive director and curator.
Thank you, Muriel, and hello everybody from Switzerland, the Lake Geneva regions. We are in Lausanne. Some words about the ArtTech Foundations we launched in 2017. The foundation is dedicated to building bridges between art, culture, technology, and entrepreneurship, which is something we are very focused on. So we promote innovation and entrepreneurship in the cultural and creative industries, and especially helping startups to be more visible. Every year we organize the ArtTech Forum. This is our annual flagship event, and which we try to bring together key players from art, culture, and startups also, or investors. And this year's editions will take place at the end of November in Oulu in Finland. So we will be very happy to welcome you in the north. We also award the ArtTech Prize. This is a competition dedicated to startups in the field of creative industries, and the call is currently ongoing. In addition, we host the ArtTech Conversations as today, and we're very proud to partner this edition, which is for us the fifth conversation, we partner with Swissnex San Francisco, and we already did with, for instance, Swissnex in Japan. So thank you to everybody and to AMI projects too, and let's discuss together.
Thank you, Nathalie. And now I guess we will get to the gist of the conversation. So let me introduce Kellyanne Adams-Pletcher, a game and interaction designer who is also director of galleries, library, archives, and museums, or GLAM at Fable Vision Studios. And Kellyanne, you're the brainchild of the project AMI, which stands for Art Plus Museum Interacting. So tell us about your pet project about AMI, which is at the core of our discussion today.
Thank you. So I would say that I'm probably one of the co-creators of this wonderful project. The other driver was Fatia Berkner from Max Kohler Foundation, who was absolutely essential. We could never have done this without her contacts and management and diplomacy as she helped us navigate all of the different museum partners. But Project AMI is a 3-year project done with the Max Kohler Stiftung and my studio, Fablevision Studios, out in Boston, Massachusetts. And we wanted to create a sort of new paradigm for building interactive, like game-based experiences. Actually, do you want me to share my deck and I can tell you all about it?
Please, please.
All right, let's do it. All right. Oh, please hold. Here we are. All right. And can you see it?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. So, I have been told that because I'm in our studio's sound booth right now, that I'm a little quieter than I usually am. So if you need me to be a little bit louder, just, tell
I
me.
think we hear you just fine. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So, Project AMI, Art and Museums Interacting. We had a couple of things that we wanted to do with Project AMI. One was to remove the barrier to creation, especially for Swiss museums who had these incredible ideas, but felt a little bit like they couldn't do it unless it was just right, they couldn't build unless it was perfect. And we wanted to take a moment to be like, well, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like it can be a prototype. And it was a partnership, like I said, between 2 fantastic organizations, Max Kohler Stiftung with Fatia Berkner and my studio, Fablevision Studios. And we together, we created 20 different museum game prototypes over the course of 2 years in 30-day design sprints. And initially, what happened was I was excited about what was happening in Switzerland. They were really interested in museum interactives and games and things that could be more playful. And I was on my way to a conference actually in Germany, and I reached out to Fatia, who I had met through a different Swissnex event. And I said, "Hey, I'm on my way to Germany, and I know that Germany is not Switzerland, but can I stop by, say hi, visit some of your museums?" And Fatia put together this wonderful tour for me where I got to meet everybody. And we found out that Swiss museums were just really excited about games and interaction, but again, didn't really feel empowered, like it felt like the type of thing that other people could and should do. But, it wasn't, I think the Swiss culture is maybe less fail forward than the American culture is, right? Like in American culture, there's this sense of like, okay, well, let's screw this up and fix it and screw it up and fix it, as you often see. It has many good parts to it and many bad parts. But in this particular situation, in a controlled environment, we thought it was very successful. Um, yeah, so after 2 years, we were able to create 20 either digital, physical, or digital physical games. And because all of this work was sponsored by the Max Kohler Foundation, it is 100% open source and available to any museum who would like to build with it. And some of the projects went right into the museums. This in the top right corner is our Globy project. It was sort of a mix between a choose your own adventure and an advent calendar, and that went right into the Landesmuseum and is available right now. This is one of my favorite projects over here on the left, which Mike designed for the Rietberg project. And I thought to me, this was one of our greatest successes because this was not what we designed. It was just like a fraction of a corner of a project that we designed. But Mike took that and ran with it in a different direction, which is exactly what this kind of collaboration is about, right? Like you see something and you're like, oh, yes, and right? Like, what if we did this, but we did it with blocks? What if we did this, but we made it a kiosk? And then down below we have again from the Rietberg exhibit the Grab It project, which has traveled a lot. And then I really love this one in the bottom corner is actually at St. Gallen, which is a relatively small museum. But they got really excited about escape rooms, and we tested an escape room with them, and now they're partnering with the local escape rooms in St. Gallen. And so some of the things like I'm working on, and some of the things I handed over to Swiss creators, and some of the things they just took it and ran and went in a direction that I wasn't expecting at all. So it really was exciting for all of us. Um, so uh, I was asked to answer this question of what is open source. And open source, it's a complicated question to some people because it means that the thing that you build is free. Essentially, that's what we're saying. It means it's free software, but it's trickier than that. And I think Dan can explain it as well. It means that we're opening the source code for you to interact with. But it means that you have to know how to get into the source code and that you have to know how to build on top of it. So functionally, what's been happening with a lot of our AMI projects, because we're dealing with museums and cultural institutions, um, so far we have not had anybody just take the code and be like, great, let's use this. So far, most of our museums have looked at the code and said, okay, how can you help us use this? And we have built like projects for them at like a fraction of the cost of what they would have done if they had had to build it from scratch. Yeah, but open source is, I think it's a really good solution for museums in sharing and expanding their offerings, especially in the United States when we're seeing a lot of our funding cut. This is sort of a way to go forward for us where we're not always reinventing the wheel if we can find ways to share and expand our work. But it's a brave new world. And so, much like Project ME, we're gonna fail forward a little bit before we really lock it down and know exactly how to share open source things reliably. But that's what we're here for. Um, so these are our stars. I thought I'd share some of my favorite projects with you. We have 20 of them, but we have 5 that we think are just really super shareable. Um, the first one is a paper prototype. And so if you have a museum or cultural institution that wants to run something that's playful, but you don't necessarily want to do something digital, this was almost like a teen magazine personality profile. But we asked questions about art. So you would look at a piece of art and then you would say, does this make you feel this way or that way? Or does it make you think about your grandmother? Or does it make you think about technology? And then we had these like art personality profiles at the end. It's just a document that you can fill in. And we have that, and you can edit it with any content you want. This was an exciting game for me because I really love history museums. We worked with a lot of art museums, but the Landesmuseum of Art and History, and we created this really fun little timeline event where you take objects that are in the History Museum and you place them on a timeline relative to one another, a little bit like the New York Times History Quiz. Again, available, open source. This is Articulate, which we did again at the St. Gallen Art Museum, but did some really fun stuff there. This was for one iPad and a bunch of kids, or grown-ups. Anybody can play this. The whole idea is that you describe pieces of art and people guess what you're describing. And this was from the Argyle Art Museum, which they called Beyonce in the museum. We don't know why. It's still up in the air. We may have to rename this eventually. But this is a little bit like apples to apples, where you ask people which object best fits a piece of art. Oh my goodness, I'm missing a slide. I do not have Grab It, but I'll let Michael and Amy tell you all about Grab It, which is another project that's open source that has been very successful and used in all sorts of wonderful places. But if you have any questions or if you'd like to use any of these projects, feel free to reach out to us, friends@projectime.com.
Thank you very much, Kellyanne. And you mentioned that one of the museums you work with is the Riedberg Museum in Zurich. And to tell us more, I'm going to throw it to Michael Korichan, who is an interaction designer at the museum. And Michael, you're also an artist. Your work has been published in various magazines, exhibited in Germany, Switzerland, Morocco, the United States. So, Michael, tell us a little bit more about how you work with Project AMI at Riedberg Museum.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Muriel and Kellyanne, for sending out a premonition about the slide I'm about to share. So we did 3 prototypes with Project AMI, 3 prototyping sessions, and it was just very exciting to introduce a museum that is usually very slow in developing things into a faster track to results. And then, as Kellyanne mentioned, we took some things and kept them quite close to the prototype, and others we completely changed because we are in a fortunate position where we can do a little more with certain things. But also, I still firmly believe in that the ideas and the sharing of the ideas is at the core of the experience, and that is what's important, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without. And as Kellyanne mentioned, it is all about using existing building blocks and instead of building new things all the time. And so to circle back to the open source idea here as well, is or not so much the open source idea, but more about joining forces. So because it's not just in the States that the budgets are getting cut. I think it's a thing for all cultural institutions, and that we just don't have the same budgets as other companies might have to develop things. So if we can pool those budgets, because we're asking ourselves very much the same questions all over. It's even though people say no 2 museums are alike, there's a lot of common denominators which work best. And I do believe that actually Grabbit, the one of the games we did with Project AMI is the perfect example of that, because the core mechanic of the game is that you have in front of you a table with answer tiles, and you have hints about those tiles that could be delivered in different mediums. In our iteration, it was delivered by these cute kids describing the same image, and of course them being kids, and us telling them don't use the word peacock if you're describing a peacock. The descriptions got quite funny. And it is very universally applicable, as I mentioned, because any museum has something that they're showing, be it images or objects. And the guessing game of this sort is just can be applied by very many different institutions with different objects, as we'll see with AMI, because they did a completely different thing. Because the clues don't necessarily need to be video. Yeah, but that's what we decided to do. And I think that's about what I have to say about it. And then we'll figure out more in the conversation.
Yeah, let me just ask you one follow-up question.
Absolutely.
In your work as an interaction designer, you focus on the overall visitor experience. So where does gaming the museum sit within the wider visitor strategy at Rietberg, and how do you measure its success within a more traditional programming?
Thanks for that question. I meant to touch on that. So the way I see it is that it's a way of allowing different levels of information and different approaches to how you discover that information. So if we discover information through play, it's learned much easier. Obviously, you might not get into the same depth. So the measuring of the success, I guess, is in getting different kinds of people into museums as well. So anytime we see a more diverse demographic coming to the museum and actually having fun there as well while learning something, that I would say is how we measure success right there.
Okay, thank you. The San Francisco Museum of Modern Art also has had the opportunity to participate in Project AMI. So we now welcome Amy Lang, who is a senior program specialist at the museum and is an arts and education, professional based in the Bay Area. So Amy, tell us about your experience with Project AMI.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and be able to talk about this. This is awesome. Um, yeah, so in the first year of Project AMI, SF MoMA kind of got slotted into an extra month, which was really lucky and awesome, kind of because Kellyanne and a colleague of mine are good friends, and it was like, let's get SF MoMA in here and see if they can make use of this, this like month. I think it was April of 2023 was our 30-day sprint, and we made our own game prototype, which was very cool, and we ended up doing a public play test with it. It was called IE, Alien. Oh my God, I always forget the acronym. Can you remember it, Kellyanne?
She's muted.
It was, yeah, you're muted. It was like,
It was Alien Interstellar Explorers Expert Edition.
thank you. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I always forget.
Well, it's a mouthful.
It's totally a mouthful and very silly and was so much fun. I was really happy to be involved in that prototype. I work on family programs at the museum, so I don't normally work on like interpretation or interactive things in the galleries that often, but I was really excited to get involved in this project. And the prototype that we built, this Alien Explorer game, was really awesome, but it really wasn't suited to the family audience, which is what I, focus on and is my purview. But we still play tested it at a big public program. Adults really loved it. It was like, cool, okay, games definitely are a thing, but let's put a pin in this and like, maybe some other department that does adult public programming might want to use it later. But meanwhile, SF MoMA got invited to the hands-on conference in October of 2023. And that's where I sort of got wind of Grab It and was like, oh, I want Grab It. I think that will resonate for kids. And so that sort of started this lovely collaboration with Michael, and Max Kohler got involved and gave us a small grant to build up Grab It into what it is. We've been all about Grab It. So yeah, I'm happy to go into detail about what SF MoMA Grab It looks like.
So let me just ask you one question. How did you adapt the Rietberg version to your museum?
So because I was going to be the sort of producer on this, I really wanted to think about it as something that was going to be super appropriate for the family audience, which is at our museum, we consider that children ages 11 and younger and their caregivers. So really thinking about that early elementary school age and younger, and just, wanting to be really accessible and immediately apprehendable, which is a term that actually our neighbor institution, the Exploratorium, uses with their interactives, something that you can walk right up to and understand right away how to use. So I can share my screen and show you what Grab It looks like with us. So you saw the images that Mike showed. Our version of Grab It has the table turned kind of so that you're standing side by side as you're looking at the answer tiles on the table. And the clues, instead of being moving images of kids sort of describing artworks, I crowdsourced kids' drawings of details of the artworks in question and had those sort of like appearing on the screen. So that was more appropriate to our budget. And also, I thought that would be a really nice way to get kids involved in the actual creation of the game. And it was really fun. Kids really enjoyed playing it. As you can see, like we play tested it 4 times at 4 different public programs. And kids got it right away. Some of the clues were a little too hard. And then it turned out that the big red buttons that we decided to have were like very distracting, and kids would just kind of mash those for fun. And it was like not really a necessary part of the game mechanics, except advancing the screens. So so since that sort of winter, so this debuted for us in December, and we ran it through March. And then we were like, okay, we need to make some changes. And actually, Kellyanne was the one that was like, let's remove the buttons. So we just sort of finished with that revision. And so I'll show you what it looks like now. No buttons, but it's got these little go tiles, which are the little circles that you can maybe see on the table. And this is post the play test we just had on June 8th. So it's looking a little thrashed. The answer tile, or yeah, the answer tiles are actual like art materials that I hot glued to these little wooden squares. And on the screen, the clues that appear are they're all based on this wonderful exhibition by a local artist named Leah Rosenberg. And she's really, it's really all about like different ways that artists make art. So she's got these pieces of text. And so this is what appears on the screen. So words like mixing, marking, repeating. And then you have these tiles to choose from. And now they look terrible right now, but like the one that's pink had an eraser on it. And so that goes with the word the word removing. So you would look at the table and go, which one removes things? Oh, the eraser. And then you would scan that one. But so that's kind of where we're at right now. I need to figure out some ruggedizing techniques to kind of make sure these answer tiles are tactile and like fun to sort of like feel and go, huh, this is what chalk feels like, or this is what pencil feels like and looks like, without it like rubbing off and getting everywhere. Or maybe that's okay. I don't know. I'm still sort of in the like looking for feedback from others sort of phase. So if anybody has any suggestions.
It sure looks like fun and like everybody's having a good time.
They did. They sure did. They had so much fun. They ripped things apart.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
And also with us today, because we haven't heard from him yet, is Dan Cruzy, and he's a technology lead and partner at the Zurich-based design and engineering agency Nerves, which he co-founded in 2009. And he is a passionate open source advocate. So we did talk a little bit about open source. And Dan, I'd like to hear your take on Project AMI.
Yeah, so in case it's not clear, I'm a bit of an outsider in this group because I'm not from the art world or the art scene, not really involved in exhibitions too much, although we have been over the last 15 years somewhat. I work much more in the commercial and consumer area, where we do all kinds of things, ranging from web platforms to like physical installations, etc. But I think it's amazing. I really like the idea that Project AMI is like set up with the foundation of it being like a sharing and an open environment. But as Kellyanne already said, open source is kind of a simple idea. It's like, okay, we just give and share our stuff for free and openly. But it's also it becomes very complex and complicated because it's not just publishing the code. That doesn't really help anyone per se, but you also need to have something that actually adds value. So you need to have actual products that kind of work and are modular and other people can actually make use of. If you just throw your crappy code somewhere on some server, then it's not really helping. Sure, it's published and it's free, but it's not like an open source ecosystem. And that's what I'm very interested in and passionate about. And I base all the business I do also on this kind of idea that even businesses, they can be heavily involved in an open collaboration where everybody profits themselves, but they're also helping the greater pool and the greater good of the project. And that's what I think has a lot of potential, Project AMI. especially with the amount of different projects. You know, if you have 20 projects and each one is contributing a small piece, you know, it adds up to, like, basically you can say eventually you get a free project out of it, like you already have, you know, like Kellyanne mentioned. And I think there are two fronts which are very interesting for Project AMI, and that the one side is the hardware part, because that's typically kind of complex and time consuming and fiddly, you know, when you're working, like, you know, a lot of these projects, they use RFID for, you know, detecting the physical objects in space, etc. And there's a lot of the learnings that go into the hardware, and you also need to write some sort of, you know, high-level microcode to manage the communication between the hardware and the actual game logic. So there's definitely a huge potential to kind of create like a foundation, a modular system that you can pick and pull different pieces. Like, for example, you say, oh, we need to use RFID, then you take that block and you place it in, and it's ready to go, and it's been tried and tested, and it works in a museum environment, etc. And if you have a screen which you want to show some kind of, you know, game graphics, then you have this module you can pull in. And that's kind of like building the ecosystem, which I think there is really where the potential lies, because then eventually you will really start to be able to scale up efficiency radically, you know, instead of a project taking, you know, 1 unit, it only takes, you know, like 0.1 unit, because you really have these modular pieces you can bring together. So it's, I personally, I think it's much more than just like posting the code, although that's already extremely valuable. But to be able to actually share, you know, well-documented, robust technologies that can really like build a community and be a big contribution. So that's just my take, and I'm definitely interested in it. And we also participated in the Readback project, and, you know, everything we do for our clients, we always share all the code we do with them. It's not that we build now like already a kind of a modular system, but we did have it in mind so that it's very easy and using very accessible technologies. For example, we used on our physical station, we actually used web technologies, which are typically much easier and accessible to, you know, upcoming programmers, etc., to work with than like throwing like, here's like some C code and microcode and some other kind of older technologies. So yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Thank you, Dan, for your thoughts on all of that. And now for all of you watching us, it's your time to ask questions to our different speakers. And Lucas, you will be managing the questions. So what are you hearing from the audience?
So far, there's no question, but I saw that Mike wanted to share something. So while we're waiting for the Q&A, we can ask.
Okay, then I will give the floor to Mike.
Why, thank you. Because I did skip over the part that Dan's company helped us build from the Project AMI prototype, which was a poetry station. And so let me just share this video. It does not have sound. Please do not be alarmed if you do not hear anything. And so this was a playful way of getting to know. So Ragamala, the exhibition was, it's an Indian art form which is composed of music, poetry, and painting. So what you saw before was the painting station, but in a different part of the exhibition, we wanted to find a playful way of getting to know the vocabulary of Ragamala poetry. So we had this installation where each of these Toblerone prisons with words in 3 different languages had 3 RFID chips in it, and you could build your own poem, and the screen behind it would show it as you laid the words down, and for certain words you would get an explanation, and in the end you could take home a postcard with your poem on it. So and again, as Dan said, that's also portable code and available for parsing onto some sort of literary museum, perhaps, because unfortunately, Guatemala is a big exception in our museum. We usually don't have many things with words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. I think I saw a question come up, Lucas, right?
Yes, the first question is the code hosted on GitHub?
Now, who is that for? Is that for?
I think that would be directed to Dan
And
or
I thought so too.
Italian.
So who wants to answer?
So sorry, Kellyanne, our code is hosted on GitLab, which is kind of like the alternate non-Microsoft version of GitHub. Is basically the same. So you can find it at gitlab.com/machinata, which is our whole core system. Or you go to nerves.ch/digital and it'll lead you there.
Okay. And Kellyanne, did you want to add something?
Oh, yeah. So all of our code is also hosted on GitHub. So yes, you can get to it by GitHub. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out, friends@projectime.com, and we'll point you in the right direction.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to ask a question now because I don't think there are any other ones. You talked a little bit, Kellyanne, about the fact that this is, there are many mindsets and skill differences between Switzerland and the United States. But I wanted to ask Amy and maybe Michael, how did these collaborations were they beneficial? Did they actually help bring the success of this project and of this partnership? Are differences? Maybe Amy first.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the fact that I've been in conversation with Mike and with Kellyanne and with other Swiss colleagues around games, and especially around Grabbit, for like a year and a half now. I mean, just the conversations alone are so beneficial, just talking about the differences between sort of like the Swiss public and the American public, and how our institutions sort of serve them, and like what our thinking is. And just, it's really opened up a whole kind of like dialogue within SF MoMA, also just among colleagues, about what public engagement really should look like, or what visitor engagement might look like, or what the possibilities might be. I think that's been a huge benefit, just intellectually. And I love collaboration. I love learning about how people have done things before, and then adapting, and then somebody can take what I've done and adapt it further, which is happening. Grabbit is going to the Minnesota State Fair.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah.
So Mike, what did you want to add something, Michael?
No, I'd just like to double down on that. It's really, no, I do have something to add. It is really an intellectual advantage to just see different points of view, but I also think the mere networking part of it. So of the 6 people that are here today, I wouldn't have met half of them at least. So and we wouldn't be able to do the products that we were able to do, and we wouldn't have had the opportunity to generate those ideas and get them done quite as quickly. Which isn't to say that but it doesn't go too much into the culture. That I think is the advantage of the cultural differences, is that, as Kellyanne mentioned, the American fail forward thing, or the go-getter attitude, which is just, let's just try this instead of thinking it through a million times over a year and a half. Let's just see what we can build in 30 days. And that, I think, is a cultural difference, really.
And I think we have some questions. I think I saw some coming up. So Lucas,
The first one is from Graham. He says, I appreciate the work being done to modularize the open source code. Have you started thinking about the ways AI-supported prompt engineering might be used to enable non-engineers to build further building blocks? So this is the first question, maybe more for Dan Callion.
yeah, let's take that one. So Dan, can you answer that
Yeah,
question?
actually was thinking about this yesterday when I was thinking about this session today, and I think it's a bit of a paradigm shift with vibe coding and AI assisted coding, because the only way that these large language models work and that it's possible to kind of use these tools the way it is now is because of open source. If the large language models don't have large amounts of code to look at, it's just not possible. So open source is extremely important for these kind of new approaches to coding and coding assistance. And I think the more that museums publish their code to like public repositories, the more the large language models will be able to really like assist and help with these problems directly, because they will have examples to pull from that are very relevant to other problems people in that space will be looking to get help on.
I will
Okay, Lucas, I think there was, oh, sorry, who wanted to?
Oh, that was me. I was just gonna
Okay,
say, I think it's kind of an interesting dichotomy because, AI is sort of the hot new thing. Everybody wants to use AI right now. And actually, the first game model that we created for SF MoMA was an AI-based game. And it was a cool concept. It was this idea of like, look at a work of art, put in AI prompts, and two people prompting how close do you get to the original work of art, and like how do your prompts differ? And we submitted that to SF MoMA as their prototype because it wouldn't have been difficult to build. But they were extremely concerned about attribution, understandably. Museums are concerned about attribution, and that is definitely something that has not been solved in sort of the AI push right now. So I think until AI figures out what they're going to do about artists and artists' rights, there's not going to be a lot of like really like forward stuff about AI in the museum space.
okay. Lucas, I think there's another question.
Yeah, we have a couple now. So the next one is also going that direction. Akshay said the Ragmala series looks like a great experiment. Are you planning to use LLMs in some fashion? I think Dan already answered some of that, and I think maybe if you want to add to that, Mike.
Actually, Nerves did come to us very early on with an idea using AI, and at the same time, someone within the museum, in a more hidden way, did the same thing with our first prototype, where we were asking people to write poems. One of the museum employees used AI and was lauded widely for his poetic ingenuity. Which of course is, I'm not sure who it is more dismantling for, but so there were ideas around it, but as I think it was Kellyanne, yeah, who was talking about the attribution problems we have, and so that was not something we wanted to explore further.
Okay. I think Amy, you wanted to say something about AI before. Did I see you wave your hand or not? No,
Oh
sorry.
no,
Oh,
I was just
okay.
applauding what Kellyanne was saying.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Lucas, any other questions?
Yes, so the next one would be what advice would you give what advice would you give to an institution that wanted to introduce an interaction of this sort to the floor? Do you need to prepare the audience in any way?
That's a great question. I was actually going to ask you that question in conclusion to this conversation, but I guess I'll add a little bit more to it. What's the first step if people are interested in doing something, and what's the number one thing you would urge museums to do? I guess we can, this question could be for Amy, for Kellyanne, and for Michael. So maybe Amy, why don't you start, since we haven't heard from you for a while?
Sure. Yeah. I would say if you're interested in getting started, just email that lovely email address, friends@projectami.com, and just say what you want to work on, what you might want to pull together. You don't have to prepare your audience, I don't think. I don't think you know, I think if you want to try something, they, will discover it, and you can experiment with different levels of instruction that you want to give, or do you want to just like play test it and see if people figure it out without instructions? I think it's really like experimentation is the name of the game. I don't think there's a lot of like overthinking that really needs to happen, except, you should maybe know before you start what your visitor outcomes are. Like, what do you want to get out of this? Is this about engaging a younger audience? Is this about engaging more people? Is this about engaging an audience that has disabilities? Is this about, so that's going to shape maybe where you start from. And that's probably the most important thing to think about ahead of time. But in terms of like, making sure that it's, I don't know, like just try it, just go for it. I don't know. Very American of me, sorry.
I think we all.
If I may do a yes and.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah. So yes and.
You're the Swiss side.
Yes, I'm the Swiss overthinker. So the only thing that you would have to keep in mind, of course, is the tone of your museum, but that goes for anything you do. So it might not be a good idea to try and do an ego shooter game if your museum is hosting human remains of controversial nature. But otherwise, yeah, it's definitely trying. And also, don't just do it for the trick of it. First, find out what your messaging is, or what you would like the audience to learn. Or, even if it is fun, I mean, there's, as a museum, you should still have some sort of message to convene, which doesn't have to be very deep. It can be on a very high level, but those two things, yeah, tone and message. But otherwise, just go try it.
And Kellyanne, what's your advice?
I like how both Amy and Mike were saying, lead with your goals first. Don't just do it for the trick of it, which I think is how you design a game and an interactive anyways, right? Like, first, goals, resources, restrictions, right? Like, what do you want? What do you have? What can you not do? Like, that's the way to start. Definitely reach out to people who are building things that you like. I think that that's a good way to do it. If you see something that you think is cool, like, just send an email. Generally, in the museums world, people are really excited to hear from you. And also, it will strengthen your case as you reach out to your administration, your museum administration. You say, "Oh, hey, I was chatting with Amy at SF MoMA, and this is a project that they're doing. Do you think we could test it?" Yeah, so those things, number one, go in with your parameters very clear. Number two, reach out to other museums, because that will always strengthen your case. And number three, go into it when you sort of sell it to your administration or your boss or your team or your board. It always helps to sell it as a test. And you say, what if we test this? Like, we'll just test it for a family day. What do you think? That's much easier than going at it and saying that you want it to be part of a permanent installation or an exhibit. It's a lighter lift. It's less risk for them.
Okay, thank you. Lucas, any more questions?
Yeah, we have some great questions. The next one is from Ryan, and he's asking, or he's saying, these are amazing examples for art museums. How could science museums and science centers adapt these ideas?
Okay, who wants to answer that? maybe Kellyanne, why don't you take that one?
I don't know. Mike looks like he's got an idea.
Oh, okay,
No,
maybe.
I would say the same way. And I only say this because while we are an art museum, we do not have the fun, colorful, modern art as, let's say, an SF MoMA does. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm assuming that's most of you, we have a great collection of non-European art, which is mostly ancient objects, which have a lot of history that you have to tell in order to understand it, which I think would be the same for a science. I mean, it's the same for a science and science centers and science museums. And I would even go as far as saying it's even easier for them because it's all about explaining. It's all about just, you don't have to tiptoe around an artist's feeling or a certain cultural meaning. You can just explain things and go about it in a playful way.
Do you want to
And
add something?
experiments are part of it, right? Part of science.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kellyanne, you want to add something?
I was just going to add that sort of the Exploratorium is the OG open source interactive, trying, testing, experimenting, prototyping museum out in San Francisco. And so if you're interested in this kind of thing for science museums, definitely reach out to the Exploratorium. I believe they actually publish sort of a list of all of their open source projects that they're working on. But I think any of these could still work at a science museum. It depends on what your content is. So yeah, feel free to reach.
Thank you. Okay, Lucas, back to you. More questions?
Yeah, one from Jose. He says, have you evaluated the impact of these plays, of these games, in terms of visitors' mental health and well-being?
Now that's an interesting question. Who wants to, maybe Amy?
Yeah, as far as evaluation goes, we're very interested in evaluation at SF MoMA. I do research with my audience around my programs fairly regularly. And getting into the specifics of research in around this Grab It game that we've been running has been a little more challenging. We were only really play testing it at big, busy public programs, and you try to hand someone a little paper survey and they don't want to do it. So that's a little tough, but I think just from observing and there's always a staff person kind of like overseeing the game, at least nearby, and noticing kind of trends and what's going on. I think overall it's been positive, but as far as really digging into the like the well-being and mental health of kids as they're trying to figure out this game, I mean, that's really interesting and would be probably like a couple year long project to spin up, but maybe worth exploring for sure.
Anybody else want to answer that? No.
The short answer is no, but I do have an anecdote sort of related to it. So it was actually not a feedback we got on one of these actual play stations. That's not the Sony product. But we had a different corner in the same exhibition where, which was technologically much simpler. You had headphones on and you could draw your own pictures. And we did have a group of Ukrainian refugees coming in, and we did get a very long feedback from them that they actually did have a cathartic cry during the experience. And but at the same time, we're able to have fun for the first time in a very long time. So I guess that sort of touches on it, but no, unfortunately, we do not evaluate the impact in detail. We just kind of try to be mindful of neurodiverse people and, designing exhibitions and how do spaces feel to them, and does it get loud? Do you need headphones? but no, it's a huge box to open for someone else to open, hopefully.
Okay. And Lucas, another question?
Yeah, the next one is more for Dan or Kellyanne, I think. How can a studio build a stable business case if open source projects can be reused by anyone?
Well, I can speak for from Nerves, and I think it's all about ecosystem. And for example, what we often do is we have different customers or clients, they have different goals. And let's say like in the commercial area, they are ego-centered goals because they want to foster their business, right? But if you overlap all of these different problems they are trying to solve and the different needs they have, as far as let's say if we're speaking about software, there's a lot of shared areas, and that's where there's potential to build like ecosystems where everyone can pull from. So everyone is working in their own goals, but they are sharing a common pooled resource area. Sure, not everything is going to be needed by everyone else, but there will be a common subset of different modules and things and tasks that everyone can benefit from. For example, there are some things we did for the poetry station at Riedberg that are now kind of in the master branch of our code base that are also now other customers and clients can use, and anybody else that is using the Machinata platform. And the same goes the other way around. I think we would have never been able to have realized the Riedberg project in such, high quality and high fidelity if we weren't able to pull from other projects that previously invested. We had some modules that banks had developed, that we had developed for banks, where they heavily invested with a much larger financial might than a museum might, that we were, and this happened I think about 2 years ago or so, which we were able to pull in and directly use instantly. And I think that is really where the power of open source comes in, is when you start to have an ecosystem where people are using it in different ways, and they're pushing back to basically to the upstream where everything is collected. And that's where what I mentioned before, where things really start to scale, where suddenly you realize, oh look, somebody else actually solved this really difficult, tedious task, and we can just go ahead and use it.
We've got about 3 minutes left, and so I want to also ask a question. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about gamifying, I guess is the word I'm looking for, cultural content? And is that even a problem? And what are you the most proud of in terms of what you've created through games? Maybe start with Kellyanne.
Sure. So I think a lot of the problem is that word gamifying, right? Which most game designers will say that they don't like that word because if you ify something, then you make it into something that it's not, right? So you funify it or you educationify it. And so we don't want to make something into something it's not. We want to bring the good out of something that exists, right? Like we don't want to gamify things. We want to build interactives. We want to build things that people can respond to. So I've been building games in museums for, gosh, 15 years now, which is absolutely insane. And I would say 15 years ago that people were very, very like hesitant about it. There was sort of this knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, this is wrong. We're making things light. We're making things like we're making fun of things. We're trivializing important things. And I think now that people have seen how important games are in the entertainment ecosystem, that games are a way that people engage with things and interact with them. And there's a lot of games that are not video games. I would say maybe 15% of the things that I design are video games at all. So I think that people's minds are expanding about what games and interactives can be and what they can do and where they can live in the world of sort of engaging with content.
Amy, would you like to answer that question too?
Yeah, I totally agree with Kellyanne that it's, there's maybe a hesitancy around, yeah, things being like dumbed down, for example, but I'm used to that anyway, working in family programs where, I'm trying to make things accessible to a younger audience. It's by no means dumbing it down. It's distilling things for a certain kind of brain. And I think that's something that games do really naturally. And, there's a lot of expertise involved with coming up with a really brilliant, very simple, very accessible game mechanic that anyone can play and get something, make some meaning out of. So yeah, just.
Thank you. And Michael, what's your take on this?
Oh, I'd just like to leave it at that. Everything's been said, and I've already talked so much.
Okay, but I think we're actually coming to the end of our discussion. There's just 1 minute left. I don't know if there's somebody that wants to say something to conclude or not. I think we've pretty much
Something that I'd like to say.
Yeah.
I see that Anna Blenninger asked us, what does the future of Project AMI look like? And I'd like to say that it looks a lot like you, Anna. So I really hope that everybody who is here with us and who took an hour out of their day to see what this is and to experiment and explore it, that you reach out and you see what these projects are and you see how you might be able to use them. Because like we said, this is all about a community. A community begins with friends. So we really hope that you guys will help us to grow this community.
Thank you. And on this very optimistic message, we're going to conclude this conversation. And I want to thank you all the participants in the United States, those who got up very early this morning and those who got up a little less early, and those in Switzerland who now it's cocktail time, I guess. Thank you for following us today, for your participation in our conversation, and a special thanks to Swissnex and the ArtTech Foundation and Project AMI, of course, for their incredible work, and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.